take the issue of violence, the crime, murder, basically. The last year has seen an astonishing increase in the loss of Black life in America. That the number of Black Americans being murdered on a daily basis is simply out of any understanding of a Western society. That to me, to live, and obviously not all African Americans, plenty of African Americans in middle class and who are not involved in these localized, unbelievable warfare zones. And why is that murder rate so high? 56% of the murders last year were committed by Black men, who represent 6% of the population. Isn't that a crisis? And even a greater proportion of victims of gun violence are African American, and many of them young, innocent children, bystanders. Near my neighborhood in DC, like 2-year-olds shot. To me, that is an unbelievable crisis that we need to have. And I noticed that the left, their view is the way to solve this is to take the police, defund them, abolish prisons in a way that strikes me as unleashing a tornado of violence against African Americans in this country. How did you respond to those thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you might have a little bit of a misunderstanding about what the defund movement is all about. And I just had a conversation. I actually just interviewed for my podcast earlier today, India Walton, who just won her primary, as the first socialist mayor of Buffalo, first socialist mayor to be elected of a major city in the last 50 years. And she comes from a community that's directly affected by that kind of violence and is deeply committed to fixing it. I think no one is more committed to fixing it than the people who are actually from those communities. And I think it's sometimes feels frustrating, a little patronizing for folks who don't have the direct exposure to kind of sometimes performatively behave as though they care more about the people in those communities. Like, people in the communities care a lot. And the argument is that we need to start being serious about what's driving all of that crime. And in a lot of ways, the whole conversation, hour-long conversation we've been having about poverty is really a conversation about the predictors of crime. I'm sure you've done your research and spoken to a lot of criminologists on the show who can tell you outright what the main predictors of crime are and how relevant poverty is, how relevant concentrated urban poverty is, and particularly the design of a lot of these neighborhoods where it's stacked high multifamily units without any common spaces, the incredible impact that architecture and urban planning has on human behavior, the impact that a lack of educational opportunities, food deserts, the ability to run your life and your family the way that people in more affluent areas do, all come into play. And so what the argument is from the defund movement, and this is, I think, was really great, India is really great at describing this, is that you have to have an infrastructure in place on the path to defund, right? No one is advocating that you go up to the prisons right now and fling open the doors. The argument is that we have to get serious about addressing the root causes of crime, to bring our crime rates down to other similarly situated countries, to address the proliferation of guns and the way that illegal drugs are motivating crime, including by legalizing at least some kinds of drugs. Some people would say all, but that's a debate that needs to be had. And to get at root causes so we can get to a place where mass incarceration is no longer an issue. And part of the step along that way is looking at the ways that police funds have largely been going to policies that don't actually prevent crime. So you see a city like Los Angeles where 50% of the city budget goes to the police department, and crime rates go up and up and funding just goes up and up. And in every other context, if conservatives saw a government policy throwing good money after bad, they would say, no, let's defund that.
Well, hold on a
There's no
second. Let me
issue in cutting
make a
education or
couple
any other
points.
kind of thing. Well, if I'm almost done. Just
Okay.
the one last point I would make about the defund movement is that the issue in the policy that is being advocated for is to shift resources from, let's say, buying tanks that can drive up and down a street and really provide no protection or benefit for anybody, to training police officers or training people who are not police officers, whatever you want to call them, to meet the needs of what the majority of calls on the job are.